2016 has been an unusual year for me. I was asked to be on the National Wild Horse and Burro Advisory Board early this year, so knocked me over with a feather. I have no idea why I was chosen, and maybe BLM at this moment doesn't either. Anyway, I am the humane person. That's not my title, but maybe I am the humane person on this board. And we had our first meeting, and at our second meeting, which was earlier this month, we made quite a stir, didn't we? The majority of my colleagues on the board made a recommendation that the wild horses in holding be destroyed, which is about 44,000 animals. Healthy, wild horses. No way. And as the vote was taken one by one, I think I was the second to the last person, and they all voted yes. And I went, oh my God. I thought, I mean, these are not mean and evil people, at least I didn't think so, but am I that far out on this? And so when they came to me, I said, absolutely not, no. But, you know, it passed. The recommendation was made. Now, typically what happens is those recommendations are not reported back to the committee until the next meeting. Well, the next meeting is scheduled for next April. And so when Neil Cornsey, who is the head of the BLM, on Monday, I believe, came out with a no, we are not going to do this. This was a departure from their general way of going about things. And now I'm going to flash back. So this was an awful day, right? I was ashamed to be on the board, but I didn't want to be there, but I was sure glad I was. I was glad. You're welcome. But earlier in the year, I took a bigger beating. Congressman Grijalva had asked me to be the spokesperson for wild horses for the Federal Lands Subcommittee hearing, and that was in June. And so we spent an awfully lot of time preparing a 20-page document with footnotes and everything in it. And then I had a 5-minute verbal presentation that Mark Katz, who's here today, Mark, thank you, helped me to craft. Mark is a local person and a wonderful person, and we really appreciate your help, Mark. He tried to make me, you know, be appropriate for these people, but he didn't. He didn't warn me that all the Democrats were on the House floor, and they were protesting the lack of gun control legislation. So here I was. I was on a panel of 4, and I was the only one who was speaking for the horses again. And the only people in the room, basically, were our Western, very conservative congressional representatives on this committee. And I don't know how many of you watched this. Oh, a lot of you watched it. I used to be a Republican media consultant. I started my career early on. I worked for the Democratic Party in Florida, and then when I moved to Colorado, so many of my friends and colleagues were Republicans, and I started working for Republican candidates. And I worked with President Reagan, and I worked with some of our United States senators. And so the decorum that I was used to, the way we treated people, whether you're Republican or Democrat, was very, very different than what I found on the Hill. It was very disappointing. It was the longest 2 hours of my life. They didn't listen to anything I had to say. And they're a scary bunch of people. I mean, we really have to be alert and on our toes, or something's going to be sliding in, slithering in somewhere in some legislation, largely or mainly maybe this omnibus appropriations bill will be the time and place where they're going to try to slither and slide. Remember the Burns rider? That was we called it the Midnight Rider. It was done, it was a deal. Harry Reid was involved. And it was a deal with Conrad Burns, who was senator from Montana. And that's why each year we have to have a continuing resolution, or the horses could be sold without limitation. And you know where they'd go, Canada or Mexico. So many of them did go to Mexico. Tom Davis is an individual that, do you remember who he is? Yeah. He was well known as a kill buyer in a little town in south of Alamosa, Colorado, near the Salazar Ranch. And his parents did work for Ken Salazar. He did hauling for Ken Salazar. But of course the secretary at the time, Secretary of Interior Salazar, didn't know anything about this, right? And the investigators who supposedly investigated Tom Davis didn't find anything out, of course, about him. He's a known kill buyer. There's about 15 people that live in the town where he lives, and there's about 200 people that live in, 50 miles around there. Everybody knows what toothpaste you use and what you had for breakfast this morning. So it was a ridiculous assertion, and the secretary was on election night, was being interviewed by a Gazette Telegraph reporter, and Dave Phillips is his name, and we had gotten into an Obama rally night, get out the vote. And Dave was asking him questions, and I was videotaping him. And after he answered his questions, the fourth of which was about Tom Davis. I mean, Dave threw him some softballs, about how's it going with the oil and gas and blah, blah, blah. And then the last one was about Tom Davis. And he answered in a very politically correct way, and that was the end of the press conference. And he walked in front of me, and I held out my hand to say hi and introduce myself. And he got right in my face, and he says, "Don't you ever do that again." Dave Phillips is right here. I could touch his shoulder, standing right there. Secretary went over to Dave Phillips, and he said, "If you ever do that again, I'm going to punch your lights out." This is the Secretary of the Interior. So maybe I should have been kind of briefed on what politics are about these days. Maybe I would have been a little better prepared for the beating that I took in June. This is a very bipartisan talk, of course. Salazar, Democrat, the Western people that were on that committee, largely Republican, all the people that were there were. And so I think that we should be exactly what they are not. I think we should be polite. I think we should listen. I think we should look at both sides. I think we should always have in the back of our mind what's best for the horses. Not whether I don't like somebody's perfume, or they didn't dress right, or they said the wrong thing, or they were annoying, or they smelled, or they don't drive the right kind of a car, or they don't make enough money. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is the horses. Obviously, my love are wild horses. I began nearly 23 years ago when I was asked to do a film for Marty Stauffer's Wild America about Mustangs. I knew nothing about wild horses. I mean, all of you combined, knew 1,000 times more than I did. But very quickly I learned what made them tick, and that is family and freedom. So what is the goal for wild horses? And what is the goal for our management practices? Always family and freedom. How do we accomplish this? We keep the horses on the range with their families. How do we do that? I believe that we have to play a role in all this. This is going to sound really strange. Can we be the predator in their world? What balances a prey species? Predators. They're few and far between on our wild, beautiful ranges. But we don't want to kill foals. What we want to do is prevent them from being born. And those that are born, we ensure that they live a life of freedom. And I believe we can do this together, but it's going to take a lot of volunteers out there in the range. to help us know who's out there, how many are truly out there, and how we manage them through safe vaccines that are reversible. If there's a horrible storm and we lose half the herd, we stop. If real predation happens, we stop. That's why we do not want permanent sterilization of our herds. We won that victory, didn't we?
Yes.
And it was all of you and the American people who said, no, 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 no. And it also took a little bit of legal action and to kind of push them over the brink. And it was, we filed a suit that was a First Amendment suit that said, if you're going to do this, we want to be there. We want to report back to the American public, and we want to take pictures, and we want to take live action video. And I don't know what caused them to dump not only the horrible ovaryectomies, but also the other two procedures that aren't as invasive, but they stopped. And so we get a black eye because we file legal actions. But they weren't listening to you. They weren't listening to anybody. They were going to push forward. They were going to do this hideous thing. And so I think the legal actions were certainly the way to go. And it was a victory. And of course, thank you. Thanks. Well, I can go on and on about what I love, and that's wild horses, and where I want to be, and that's sitting on a hill with them. But this is a different kind of a hill, and I'm glad I'm here too.
Thank you.